G'day guys, I'm Helen Norton and it's day 3 of my 30-day watercolor challenge. And I'm just going to tell you I'm about to go over and do the work for the day. And it's just amazing. I've been here editing all morning already. It's in the old days, we used to have to pay for marketing and get out there and put notices up on notice boards or work with our art galleries and the promotional stuff. It was really quite a lot of logistics. And now we just use internet, websites. Of course we have websites, but making YouTubes like this, social media, oh my goodness. The amount of time that you spend on these things, doing videos, whatever it is you're doing, social media, is so much more than you're actually working in the studio. Honestly, by a mile. It's so many hours involved in it. So it really does make you think about when an artist chooses not to even show up on social media. But the trouble is, if you don't, then you're going to heavily rely on outside contracts. And if they're honouring you, that's great. But a lot of the time they don't these days because they can do exactly what we're doing, which is use social media. That beautiful human touch is gone. And I think that's what's driven me to jump on here and make these videos, because of the human connection. And this allows me to do that on a daily basis, or however many times I want to broadcast, and I hope I can keep it up. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying. I'll work out what I'm doing when I get over there as far as topics concerned, and I'll see you over there. Howdy, here I am again. And I'm going to do another little painting. Today is day 3. So we're going to stay in the same vein as yesterday, where we made a little landscape. And the first thing we did was a wash over the whole paper, just wet it down, and then put the degraded wash on it. So don't worry if you use gallons of paint, because you're not going to waste it. So here's my little Artist Spectrum blue colour. So I'll just squeeze some of that in there. A little bit of water in there. I don't want it to be too watery, and I'll mix it up. There's going to be a lot of paint on this brush, so I will use it up. So you're probably going to see me go through all this process again as I unload it onto the paper, but I'm not going to edit that out, because then you can see what happens in the studio. Nothing's perfect, so that's still got lots of goodies on it. Now I would have it set up for all my different main colours that I would use. This was a red gold, but I would have it so that I could have a brush for every colour like this, and then I could prepare the page and get on with it. So I'm just going to put a very light spray on there, and not too much water this time. So just brushing it out so it's not too wet, and let's see how we go. All right, diving in, deliberately using this little cheap thin paper. Now here we go. And the idea is so that I don't fuss over these paintings. So I'm going to bring that down to about 2/3. As I said yesterday, don't do it half, because it always looks a bit silly. Just take note of how the paint pools at the top, and the way to fix that I don't need to now because I'm going to be bringing more paint down, but you basically just lift it up and blot it on the towel, which is why I use a towel. So that's quite a thin paint in there, so I've got what I need at the moment. And then I can ramp it up. If I go and put the big brush in there, it's going to thin it right out. So I'm going to be a bit risky here. Now come on, get over there. Okay. I'll show you what I'm going to do in a minute. So I've really laid it on thick up the top. Okay, just bringing it down. Now, because this is so thin, it's giving me a headache. So I'm just going to let it roll back and forwards. You think I've lost control, don't you? Because the paper is so thin, it's driving me crazy. All right, I'll bring that back down, let that blot out. And now what I'm going to do is save myself with the dryer. So I'm going to push the paint up at the same time as drying it from the top. Just watch. Okay, so I didn't get a very good graded. Perhaps I might switch over to the heavy stuff and defy myself. But actually I don't care, because for what I'm doing, I just want that big blue sky. It is quite light down here though. So let's move on to the next stage. Just cap that off for next time. And we're going to stay with this idea I had in the previous one, where I'm going to have these little mountains in the background. But this time it should be dry. So I'm using a bit of ultramarine blue, and I'm going to have some mountains. Okay. And then you're going to see a little bit of the other blue underneath. They look quite natural, don't they? And then I will take a little bit of mauve and come in the bottom, just meeting the bottom part. Just push it up a little bit here and there. Just try to keep it natural. If you just let it do things, see that? Just, it does things by itself. And if you don't try and control it all the time, you can get beautiful results. Got a pinky colour. Again, I'm going to use that pink to just hit the bottom. And then, thinking about the Australian outback, which I might need, do need some more sienna. That's just a lighter colour, not so orangey. You can't see, I can't fit everything on the screen. So I'm going to keep going down. I'm just being more intense with the colour, the sienna, but I'm going to bring in some more intense red gold into the palette. And there, really hit it hard down the bottom, but really intense. Right, so let's go with this. I'm just going to really bunch it up and push back down. See how I'm doing that? Pushing it back down to get that intensity into the foreground, and the back of the brush is empty. So it's not putting the gold paint up. And wash it out and push it down. So you're getting this lovely grade. And while it's nice and wet, it's a good time to just put in a little bit of other colour in there, but not too much. You don't want to ruin what you've got. But just adds a little depth, a bit of interest. Right, now I'm going to hit it with the dryer. I guess a normal person would tape down their paper, but oh gosh, who could be bothered doing that? I think just leaving it run wild gives much more interesting results. So in this particular painting, I'm going for a tree again, but I'm going to have this one right in the foreground, coming over like that. So I'm having to top up my palette because it's a bit pathetic with some burnt sienna. I'm going to take off with the gouache, and I find gouache better a lot of the time because it seems to be more hardy and you can do things with it. Right, so here I go. A nice big strong form. There we go. I might just put a really decent amount of dark into the shadow of it. Okay, maybe into the side of it. Under there. More dimensional. And see how I just leave that exactly like that. Could just leave it like it is to cauliflower away, because it's exactly the kind of shape that happens in this. It's the bark and things like that. So I'll take some of the dark on this side, some more texture and form. But these trees we have in Australia are often like that. All right, now I think I'm just going to leave that be, and I might even dry it. I could put a few in the background to just be very careful with them being in the distance. So again, I'm just using a very light, loose, weak bit of ultramarine blue. It's almost a little bit too strong. I overwhelm the background, because if you do put strength into those in the background, of course, your eye comes off the foreground, which is where you want it to be in this painting. That'll do. Now, I could put a little bit of interest on this side to balance it, and I might do that. Just picking up a bit of, just using, again, the same watery mix. I can always intensify it later. It's only just to put a bit of a counterbalance to that composition, which I'll show you in a minute when we join it all up. So it doesn't quite look right yet, but have faith. Just deepen it a little bit, it'll start to make sense. Now, we'll be putting some foliage on that. I think I do need a little bit more curly-whirly up here. So Let me see. I want to get my hand in your way. You'll see in a minute because I'm going to put some, this is going to have foliage, so we want to have branches on this one. All right. Now, dry. Oh, you know what I might do? I might just add some, this is giving me a feeling that I want that kind of salmony gum feeling here. It's just begging for it. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Salmon gum. Where it might just have these sort of colours, the bands, and that feels nice. This one just needs to go somewhere. And, careful here. Right, dry. The good thing about this thin paper is it actually dries fast. All right, now I want to get stuck into the leafy part. This is going to be very approximate and rough, and it's exactly what I want to do. But I do need some fresh paint because this is all too dry. All right, greens. Okay, this is olive green. Gouache, oxide of chromium, which is that lovely lime colour, and yellow green. I think I'm just going to use these three and create something out of them. You can mix phthalo green with a red to get a more olivey colour. But, oh, right, let's go. I'm going to be quite brutal in my application, but brutally careful. Right, so I'm going to be blobbing in this case, which is going to look crazy to you. And but it's easy, but not too much, right? I'm going to be using the paint, letting the paint do its own work. Just fill up the canopy up here. And we need to stay consistent in a non-consistent, all over the place. Consistently inconsistent. Right, so that's the darkest colour. That's the phthalo green. Right? And then I'm going to come back with another layer using this oxide. Here we go. And again, quite wet, but still very intense. So I want the colour to be intense, not like a big swamp. I'm just dropping it into the dark. And I'm keeping in mind that the light might be coming down from the top. So the idea is to have this random feeling. And then I will move to the next colour. Now what have I got? I've got some green. It all adds up to the feeling of texture. Okay. Now, I want the next one to be a sort of a light, let me just see. So it needs to be a sort of a cross between sienna and white or something. So I'll just see what I can make up. All right, so up a bit of red gold. I'm switching to the tiny brush. It's just too intense. And I'm making these little, what might be like little curly whirlies. What might be better now is for me to wait till that dries, or to dry it, and then come back and intensify that colour. But I've got the idea there, and maybe I'll lighten that up while I'm here. It looks a bit heavy, but I'll come back in a minute with another brush. With a bit of water, I've squeezed it out and just push that into like a general light top. Right, now it might look a bit rough, but it will all work out in the wash. So just need to have a bit of a lightish colour on those trees at the back, which is just using a bit of a mixture of ultramarine and the other colours we've been using, just very weak. So we've got this tree, which doesn't look too bad at all. So we could put some more action down the bottom, as in some little shapes and things, like just say, I've got one painting I remember I did, and I called these little white things mulla, which is a beautiful little flower, a wild flower that grows in the desert. They are everlastings, but the mulla is like a little pinky kind of one. it comes up on a little stem in the desert. It's beautiful. It's just so lovely. You're out in the desert and you see these little flowers popping up everywhere. It changes your whole view of the desert. Right, so might have to come back on that. They dry a bit. But see, even just putting things like this adds a bit of texture. But you've just got to know when to stop. All right, I'm going to dry this and then add more elements. All right. Now, the usual thing I do is put some cockies in there. So that's what I might do. Some random cockatoos. So I'll make the usual thing where I just grab a little bit of just a wash and just say, I don't know, it feels like perhaps we'll just have one here flying. Okay, we'll just put his body there, his head. Just give him a wing. That'll do. And then I'll have one up in the tree. There he is, sitting there. Okay, that'll do, you see, just so quick. That's 2 cockies. Now, I'm tempted to work into them, or I could dry them. I think I'll work into them. So I'm going to make them white. So I'm just going to do the same method where I literally just say, okay, the sun appears to be coming from there. So I'm just going to put a bit of white paint on the outside of them. Perfect. All right, so if we want to bring these little cockies forward, we might have to use a bit more intense white, maybe straight out of the tube again. Small brush. Right. Let's go. You can see there. And if we let that dry, we can put a few tiny features like eyes and things. Okay. Now, that is not what a cookie necessarily looks like with his eyes, because he doesn't have that colour, but we're only going for the effect, remember. And what we do need is just a little tiny hint of his feet. He would have a couple of toes like that. And why don't we give him just a little tiny crest. And that just is like a micro dot. And it's better without me mucking around with that. That's all right. Okay. Oh, hang on. That will do. The only other thing I might do is add a little bit more intensity to the colour, but it's not bad. I like it just like it is. With intense pink into there in the molar. And it's just a clue. It's like a little clue. Generally just goes like that. There. So it's an expression. Finish of that one. What do you think? Just a very small, easy, she says, easy watercolour, and you could just do the best you can. Of course, you can't sell an image that you've copied from me, but this isn't about selling. It's actually about you seeing how easy it is for you to do something beautiful for yourself and for you to share. Thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 4. It would be more likely picking up on the yellow reflection because the water is moving around, and when the top of the water might go like that, it'll pick up the colour that's there because of the way the water is facing. That's why you might get like a little yellow sort of line or something like that on something that's over the other side.